after Saturday's game against Missouri, it sucked. Yes, it was awful. And I think we talked about it a little bit even on our live post-game show. At the end of the day, if you're Kansas, you played against probably your toughest opponent, and now you're in a situation where you have a bye week and you might be in position to possibly make a run at the Big 12, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Just now that you've had a couple of days to maybe process the border war return a little bit more, what were some of your additional takeaways from that game, maybe where Kansas sits heading into this bye week?
Yeah, it's interesting because I do think Missouri was quite a bit better on rewatch, and I think that when you looked at it, Kansas, didn't play its A game. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There were some big mistakes in key moments. There were times where, hey, this guy missed a block and it blew up something that maybe should have been a little bit more impactful. Obviously, you had the big drop. You had Jalen miss, Emmanuel Henderson deep a few times. You had the turnover for a safety, different things like that. And I bring all of that up to say, Nick, Kansas still had every chance to win this game, even with not playing well, even with Missouri, playing better in that game. You still have the lead with under 9 minutes left to play. You still get the ball back with 5 minutes or so left to play, where a touchdown drive would have put you back up. And so I think that was sort of the takeaway on rewatch was you did see that, hey, on Saturday, Missouri was the better team. But at the same time, I think it's a highly encouraging. And again, I said this on our show on Saturday night, you don't take moral victories from rivalry games. And so I hope that's not what people think I'm saying here. What I'm saying is the fact that if you're looking at this Kansas team and you're looking at them heading into Big 12 play, like you mentioned, and sort of what's ahead of them, I do think that this is a team that is capable of playing with everybody, and possibly even, you don't ever want them to play their C game, but a team that's even possible that they could win a game or two, maybe if they don't play their best, just because they're tough and competitive.
Yeah. I mean, you think about the Missouri game, and the defense really hung in there, right?
Yeah.
The defense really did all they could. I mean, they really started to grind down, I think, over the course of that game as we kind of watched it unfold. But, another thing that I kind of thought about after the game and thinking about it more now as we get into this week and towards the bye week is, Kevin, Kansas is going to have a chance to be probably healthier after the bye week than they were to even start the season.
Yeah.
When you think about Bengali Kamara now having some time, I mean, first of all, he ended up playing a majority of the game anyways on Saturday, whether that's gamesmanship or whatever it may be. But you think about having some extra time to maybe get fully healthy. You think about Joe Sip, who we haven't even seen play yet, who could be adding to the depth of that linebacker room. We've talked a lot about the defensive line, Kevin, and especially the interior of the defensive line with what we've seen from those defensive tackles. Well, they've been doing that these first 3 games without Gage Keys, and he could easily, be returning to add to that group as well.
Cam Pickett, another guy too that I think was banged up, toward the end of it. Only, we talked about him on the show, Nick, only played in 14 plays once the snap counts came up. Most of those were in the fourth quarter when it was a really tight game, where I think he basically said, hey, I'll give this thing a go and try and help him get there. And so when you look at that too, when you look at, Le'Shawn Williams hadn't been sort of 100%, I definitely agree with you. I think there are so many places where they could be significantly healthier. Obviously, DJ Graham was coming back from stuff. I'm totally Bryson Canty is a guy that, was not healthy all through camp. Basically, we saw him a little bit in week 2, didn't really see him against Missouri. He's somebody that you have a week to continue to get him into the offense and get him, healthier and working forward. And so, yeah, they could be basically heading into that West Virginia game to start conference play. They could be as healthy as you would have wanted to be heading into week 0.
And I do want to ask you this, as the schedule kind of worked out, Kansas has this sort of clean break between the non-conference slate and now going into conference play with this bye week. 2-1. Going to the bye week, I mean, I guess how would you assess sort of big picture what Kansas did in the non-conference versus maybe what you were expecting, or kind of how things ended up playing out?
Yeah, it's been interesting too because Fresno State has been so much better since week 0. Fresno State's 2-1 and beat Oregon State on Saturday, and they've been able to run the ball really well. And so you start to look at that combined with the Missouri game and say, okay, this Kansas team, has a chance to be pretty good. And I think we talked before the season started too about how beneficial these bye weeks are and the timing of them. Also, Lance Leipold and staff being very, very good at utilizing those bye weeks over the last few years. Having that clean break before West Virginia in the start of conference play, getting healthy, it's going to be a good thing. You got another one before K-State. I believe you've got another bye week before Iowa State as well. And so this is a team that there aren't a whole lot of games on the schedule that, with the way Kansas has played so far, you just feel like, oh, that's an auto loss. That's not to say there aren't difficult games there. Obviously, Utah has been tremendous so far. You get Utah and Lawrence, but Utah has been really good. Texas Tech has looked like we thought Texas Tech might look. You have to play them in Lubbock. There are difficult games there, Nick, but I think that KU is showing that, hey, this is a team that can play with anybody. And, hats off to Missouri, honestly. I know people don't want to hear that, but that was a really good football team that KU played on Saturday, and a team that, if Bo Pribula is out there dealing like that, this is a Missouri team that has every chance to maybe make a run at a college football playoff berth. And so losing to that team in Columbia is not necessarily, in a rivalry game, is not necessarily an indicator of, oh my gosh, there's so much work to be done.
Well, as you mentioned, another benefit of playing in week 0 is you essentially get 3 bye weeks now during the season, right? I mean, that's I think, to me, with what we know about Lance Leipold and some of the success he has coming off a bye, I think that's a pretty significant thing that you stuff up by playing in week 0 to have basically 3 bye weeks over the course of the season, like you mentioned, right here as a break before the start of conference play. And then before arguably what is going to be 2 of your bigger games on your schedule, with K-State, obviously, and then Iowa State. So I think that's huge, right? I think that's huge. And yes, I don't want to say it, but I will say it. Missouri is probably the best team KU's going to play all season. And when you factor in that it was on the road in an environment that was obviously juiced up because of the rivalry, and it was a vicious environment, first of all, you had the lead in the fourth quarter. And then you also had the ball in the fourth quarter with a chance to drive down and retake the lead as well. Now, with that being said, I do have concerns about Lance Leipold and some of his game management coaching style. And unfortunately, I don't think he's going to change in that regard. Like, I'm not expecting Lance Leipold to reflect on this Missouri game and say, well, we lost because I made the wrong coaching decisions. I don't think he's going to do that. And I'm not saying that to take a jab at him or whatever. I just think that he has the way that he's going to approach the situations, and I don't believe he is going to change that. I mean, he is such a process-driven guy. Obviously, Kevin, you and I have been around him so much, and he very much believes in that process. And part of that process is what makes him such a great coach for Kansas in terms of rebuilding this program to what it is. But I think it also can be to a fault, in the sense that if his process says he's going to do this, then he's going to do it. And I don't know how much flexibility there is in that. So, as Kansas continues to play games this season, and we see KU inevitably, I think probably is going to end up in more games where it's a 1-possession game at the end of the first half. It's a 1-possession game at the end of the game. You need to make decisions on what you're going to do and how you're going to play late game scenarios. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't at least a tad bit concerned about how that may unfold, especially when you consider the fact that that was really what doomed Kansas last year, Kevin. They lost so many of those 1-possession games and late game scenarios.
Yeah. And for all of Lance Leipold being a process driven coach, and he is, and that's really what you need to be successful consistently in college football. There are some outcomes that probably, encouraged his opinion on that. You look at the 2023 Oklahoma game where KU got the upset. KU's defense bears down and gets a stop. to get the offense the ball back, and you wind up going down. And that was a time where I think most people felt this game's over. Oklahoma just got the turnover. KU's not going to get the ball back. They got the ball back, went down and scored to take the lead. And the flip side of it is last year against UNLV, we saw Kansas go for it. Jalen Daniels winds up throwing an interception. There's a big return. Next thing you know, UNLV is getting a touchdown that is just huge right before half. And so you are a little damned if you do, damned if you don't. And with the benefit of hindsight, you can absolutely say, hey, this is a mistake. And I think most of us felt like, hey, you should, especially in a rivalry game, especially where you're an underdog, maybe you should take a few more of those risks. I had more issues, I think, with the end of the game where your defense is worn out. You're probably not getting a stop. It's fourth down. I probably had more issues with that than I did the end of the first half, because at the end of the first half, if Daniel Highshaw doesn't go out of bounds, if you just tackle Missouri for a 2 or a 5 yard gain or whatever when they run the ball, trying to get out of the half, you're fine. Like it's conservative, but you go into the locker room up 21-18. It just so happened that there were some mistakes in addition to that decision that made it the wrong decision. But I felt like at the end of the game, go for that, especially with the way Jalen was kind of dealing at that point. I would have felt a lot more confident in, hey, Jalen has one play to get 7 yards versus your defense has to get a timely stop so that you can get the football back.
Well, and look, even if you don't buy into the analytics aspect of it, which would tell you to go for it in that situation, even if you're not a believer in that, I think you just have to have a feel for the game at that point, right? Your defense had been on the field for 40 minutes practically. They've been out there for 75 plus plays at that point. And in the second half specifically, they were giving up 6, 7, 8 yards a carry because of the fact that they were, really just gassed at that point. So I think I would still disagree with it, but I would understand the decision a little bit more if it was a scenario where, hey, you'd gotten a couple stops previously, right? Like you were kind of already stopping them, but that wasn't the case. So it is what it is, I guess, at this point. Kansas obviously did lose in Columbia. They'll have a chance now at this bye week to sort of put it behind them, reset, and go into conference play.